Thank you, Mohammed. Welcome. And we acknowledge the traditional owners in the usual manner. As he mentioned, I'm going to have a crack at circular economy in practice. It's no doubt a compelling topic, worthwhile doing it, and definitely that's the path we should take. However, you see, there are so many bottlenecks, and it's difficult to even explore solutions, right, when you look at the amount of roadblocks that are there, right? If we are finding the transition to renewable energy is so difficult, just think about transitioning to a circular economy, right? So the problems are massive, right, unthinkable, but I'll just go through some of them. And of course, I don't pretend to know everything, and some of the solutions you might even question, right? Okay, so what I hope to cover very quickly, talk about circularity issues, some bottlenecks that hinder achieving or moving towards circularity, and circularity issues that need some attention. You need some mechanism to drive this process, right? Otherwise, it just mere words won't drive this process. Then we'll take an example from clothing circularity, see what's going on, and then it highlights the real issues. And then I put forward at least one pathway to achieving circularity, right? Okay, so this is what we basically want to do. Pollution, waste, reuse problem, we want to minimize, right? And use as little resources as possible in the future, for obvious reasons. So basically, we want to move away from a linear economy to a circular one. So raw materials, we go into outputs, and then waste products, that's the linear one, but we want to do better in the future, right? And then byproducts are there, you create byproducts, raw materials, we use a bit, maybe extract from outside, that's what we want to do, and then you go output, and then we want to create this, right? At least that's the vision conceptually. Do you really believe we can do this? Right? Given the previous presentations, it's difficult, right? Some would say it's impossible. Anyway, worth having a crack. So I would say a circular economy and a sustainable development are two sides of the same coin, and this was sustainable development is a popular phrase. We know that best known definition is given by Harlem Brundtland, the former Norwegian Prime Minister in the 1980s. She came up with this wonderful definition, right? She wrote this in about 1986, at a time when the internet was not there, right? We didn't have AI to seek our information. But she came up with this vision, and it really closely aligns with the circular economy. She didn't talk about the circular economy. At that time it was not used, but you will very soon see that sustainable development and the circular economy are two sides of the same coin, no doubt about that. Right? So there are other definitions, but this is the definition I would love, right? That leaving something for future generations, if we have to do that, then surely we should engage in a circular economy. Okay, so the challenges and opportunities are massive, unthinkable if you grasp that, right? But and basically it's creating a new economy. Right. And the ones that are in green are some of the like the stewardship schemes we have in Australia. Started in about 2011. Some of them, the green stewardship schemes, are mandatory. Some are voluntary. If you take the clothing one, the producers, sellers, they sell. They give 4 cents to a federal fund. They contribute. So it comes from the seller. Now, in the case of bottles, containers, the companies give 10 cents to the person depositing those bottles. And some of these stewardship schemes may not have any financial incentives, right? They are mandatory, but there are voluntary ones. But there are some others on the edges that federal government is working towards. But what you see is there are so many out there that are not mandated, or there aren't any voluntary schemes. So the thing is, only a handful of products are being recycled, and very little payment is there. That's quite clearly, as you will see later, is not sufficient for recycling. Right, so those who give the money, they think they're doing a great job. Basically, it's greenwashing, right? We are very happy when you say, oh, 4 cents, right, per piece of clothing item. We are very happy, and it has collected some $40 million so far, right? But it's just a small amount of money. So, if you look at these, the thing I want to point out here is that goods can be recycled, but there is no demand for these products in Australia. So the recyclers are finding it difficult to sell them. And some other statistics, you'll be surprised to hear that 84% of plastic waste in Australia is sent to landfill. And China is the primary destination for Australia's waste and recovered material. We don't have a market, so it's sent to China. And China has put a ban in recent times, but still some goods, recycled material or material, go to China for recycling. Then another fact is steel is more likely to be recycled than plastics. That's another fact. Why? Steel is more valuable than plastics. So we don't, and most of it, 84% of Australia's plastics end up in landfill. So these are a few statistics mentioning. On a global picture, it's equally bleak. Only 9% of plastic waste is recycled, and 22% is mismanaged, as you can see, and very little is recycled, right? And the frightening bit is some of it is even burned, incinerated. Right? That creates even more greenhouse gases, the most toxic ones. And others, as you can see, the blue ones, dark blue ones, end up in landfill. There's also countries that produce this waste don't themselves recycle. It's sent to another country. So Europe will send it to another country in Europe, or one European country will send it to another European country. So, but China is quite a big destination, and this is the legal bit. But there is also a huge trade in illegal waste. So, because why is it illegal, or why do they take that path? It's because that's the cheapest form of disposal. Right, so if you have plastics here, you send it to Africa. It's only you can pay about $100 or $150 for a kilo of clothing, and you can send it to Africa. So it's much cheaper than sending it to our local landfills or recycling. So they take the cheapest way out. So achieving circularity, we had to look at the pathways. At the moment, as you can see, are not so clear, or if there is, they are very weak. We only talk. a lot, but very little action is being taken. Instruments that are available to policy decision makers, we have market and non-market based instruments. For example, pollution taxes, they can be used. In the case of non-market based instruments, regulation can be used, right? So of course, we are in academia. I can't resist putting up a figure to explain the difference between tax and regulation, a standard, right? Of course, economists would say a tax is the best, it's the most efficient. Of course, the lawyers might say regulation is better. I argue for a tax, right? Here's the problem, here's the thing, and this is the beauty of this. So now, if you take on the vertical axis, right, is the price, and you see the marginal net benefit of producing a good. For example, if you're producing an output, you would produce at QM, right? And the pollution generated is WM. And there is, of course, an external cost, marginal external cost increases. You find the most efficient price. Somehow we have to find that, is you place it at a higher level. Okay, so we call it the most efficient. Okay, so on the other hand, you can also have a standard, right? A fixed standard you can regulate. So you have a fixed standard somewhere here at QF. You can't say you can't pollute between WF, then you'll be penalized. There's a penalty. But the problem here is that the polluters capture regulators. Lobbies are always out there. So they will set the penalty low. They'll argue for that. So they'll set the penalty low. So they will go beyond, right, what they are permitted to pollute, and they will produce up to QP. So the pollution is WP. Because now on paper, it says there's a penalty, you and I are happy. Grandma is very happy about it. Why? There's a penalty. Yeah, it's doing the job. No. So they are actually lobbied to lower the penalties. So that's why we say that regulators are always captured, right? So, and of course we know that pricing pollution is a dirty word, not only in this country, in the US and many countries, right? So best example is the 2012 carbon tax we had rescinded in 2014. But if you want to see on regulatory capture, look at the work of Stigler, 1971, Nobel laureate. He started the work, huge literature on that, how regulators are captured by polluters. Right, fascinating stuff. So stewardship schemes may also fall into this category, right? They pay, they show that they are paying, but it's only a pittance, right? So they have lobbied beforehand before they agree to all this. So, but there are some green shoots, like the EU Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, is coming into effect next year. So what they're going to do is, of course, there's an emissions trading scheme there, implemented since the early 2000s. It's coming into effect next year. So what's going to happen is they are going to look at imports that are coming into the EU, and if there is carbon content hasn't been priced, they are going to put a price at the border. So this is going to spread, and of course countries like China is implementing, and they will trialing, and they would if it continues, they are most likely to implement such a scheme later on, right? So other countries will follow as well. So this is something that we should be aware of. So circularity issues that need attention, production and consumption, that is the disposal issues need to be examined in depth. We haven't looked at that. Currently, it's the latter that is mostly promoted. Production aspects are largely ignored. Environmental and social costs remain largely ignored. Right? And stewardship schemes that exist are insufficient to meet the cost of recycling, and of course important to address the circularity trilemma as well. So we import a lot of goods from China, number one, Bangladesh, Vietnam, India, right? Australia does that. And what I want to show here is this very quickly. We have a good output and a bad output. Good output is the textile that is produced, is very good, but it produces a byproduct that's bad, right? We don't talk about it. And then, of course, consumers, we are happy, we consume, and we get rid of them, right? So that's waste. And now under the stewardship schemes, producers pay about 4 cents, and of course consumers, our surveys show that consumers are willing to match it. So there is some hope there. But this aspect, of course, this quadrant B, the unpaid social costs, still no one is taking any responsibility to clean up that mess, right? So there's a big vacuum in that circularity issue. So one thing what I want to mention is recycling product. We talk about it. Current levels of recycling are very low. Production and consumption aspects, as I showed, are not fully described or not taken into account, has created a false sense of circularity. There is circularity all the time, but none of these are really questioned. And then, of course, we are not trying to create a different economy, really, right? So I'm trying to get the wording right here, and also that should be to a large extent self-financing, right? It should be market-driven or industry-driven rather than governments giving handouts all the time, right? But currently relies on subsidies or government grants for recycling, need to create new markets for recycled products. The demand for recycled products, if you recycle something here, the uptake is very low, right? So that needs to be addressed. And also the infrastructure needs to be set up. We don't have that infrastructure, right? It's very limited if we have any. The other thing is revenue raising is very important. We need some revenue can be raised from stewardship schemes, but that's only a tiny bit. Then the potential revenue can be raised from consumers potentially, but other sources of revenue also such as landfill levies could also be used in this process. But all these are issues that need to be sorted out. Right? So what's the way forward? What is there is not sufficient. So I would say in the last presentation we heard that coal gets about $2 billion, right? If you really believe that circularity is very important, then there should be tax credits and incentives, right? To get investors to join the party. Without that, this wouldn't take off at all. In the case of renewables, of course, successive governments in Australia have encouraged, and of course during the last few years, a lot of incentives have been provided, and now the market has taken off to a large extent, and even now if you remove all incentives for both coal and renewable energy, they will be able to stand on their own. Right? But still there are, of course, renewable energy, electric vehicle handouts. So such a system should be implemented if circularity is to take off. The other thing I want to do is once it happens, then market forces will take over. It will be industry or market driven. As Adam Smith said in 1776, he said, leave it to the markets, right? Then by pursuing his own interest, he frequently promotes that of society more efficiently than when he really intends to promote it. Take the example of electric cars, Elon Musk. He's not doing it for society, he's doing for his own good. But in doing so, he has created electric vehicles, which is good. Thank you.